A blockbuster deal Sunday involving the Suns and Wiz. Phoenix acquiring three-time All-Star guard Bradley Beal.
Bradley Beal, KD, and D-Book. James Jones is out here selling used cars for Rolls Royces because that's exactly what just happened. The Phoenix Suns with this big three should be the favorite of coming out of the West and winning next year's title.
Well, not for the first time, and certainly not for the last time, Kendrick Perkins was completely wrong when he suggested the Phoenix Suns would be the best team in the NBA after trading for Bradley Beal. Because now, just a year and a half after making that move, Phoenix aren't just out of championship contention, they are 3 games below 500, outside of the play-in, and are quite possibly the most pathetic team in the entire NBA. And we all know it's just a matter of time before Kevin Durant makes that trade request, which at this point might be a good thing for Phoenix, because this is a team built to win a championship now. This is not a team with flexibility, with young talent, or with any room to improve. If they can't even be above 500 nearly halfway into the season, how on earth are they supposed to turn into a championship team with none of those things I just mentioned? And their record doesn't even do them justice, because they started the year on fire, winning 9 of their first 11 games, with people thinking this might be a new, revitalized team under Mike Budenholzer. Well, since then, they have gone 6-16, and just to put that into perspective, the only teams to have won less in that period of time are the Pelicans, Hornets, and Wizards. You are competing with teams who are competing for the number 1 overall pick, and some of those losses have been embarrassing. No more embarrassing than losing to a Memphis team that was missing half of their entire roster. And we should have known this team was doomed after last year's playoffs, because there's losing in the playoffs. Sometimes you even get swept. But the Phoenix Suns were embarrassed. They were embarrassing, getting walked over by Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves, with Bradley Beal being particularly embarrassing with his performance in Game 4 of that series, recording more turnovers than made field goals after telling the media that he had never been swept. But even after an embarrassing performance like that, I didn't think Phoenix would then get worse on both ends of the floor, going from a top 10 offense and an above average defense last year to a slightly worse offense, but a much, much worse defense. And I know what a lot of people are gonna say. Injuries. Okay, how do you explain the fact the Suns have been outscored with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal on the floor? Don't even get me started on how bad all of the Bradley Beal minutes have been, regardless of who is sharing the floor with him. But when all 3 of those guys are on the floor at the same time, Phoenix have been outscored in those minutes. The entire point of creating this big 3 was for them to be absolutely dominant when all 3 were on the floor, and to have enough creation from those 3 individually that you could survive when 1 or 2 of them were on the bench. That has not been the case. And also, you can't talk about injuries with the Phoenix Suns and not mention the fact 2 of their main 3 players have been seriously injury prone over the last several seasons, which they knew before they made those trades. But the idea that a team with no depth, built around a 36-year-old Kevin Durant and an injury-prone Bradley Beal, was going to stay healthy during the regular season wasn't just optimistic, that was delusional. But when you are already likely to have Beal and KD missing 20 games a season, you can't then be bad when those guys are on the floor together. And obviously, we have to talk about Bradley Beal, because it was just yet another pathetic performance against Indiana, with him recording 8 points on 3 of 12 shooting, which means he is now averaging less than 18 points, under 4 rebounds, and just over 3 assists per game. Those are the kind of numbers you'd expect from your 4th option on maybe $20 million a year, not your 3rd big 3 superstar on $50 million a year. Which is why you can't talk about Phoenix without mentioning Bradley Beal, because with the amount of money they have invested in him, if he is performing at a role player level on offense, offense and a below average level on defense, your team is completely handicapped. No, your team is completely cooked. And speaking of cooking your team, there is one man who goes above and beyond to do that. You all know who I'm talking about. It's obviously Yusuf Nurkic. There are good players in the NBA. There are average players in the NBA. There are not very good players in the NBA. And well, then there is one spot specifically reserved for just Yusuf Nurkic, a player who is not only awful on both ends of the floor, but is also completely delusional. I mean, completely delusional. No one, not one single person on this earth or the next earth wants or thinks you're capable of playing the Kevin Durant role. You couldn't even play the KD role on the Shanghai Sharks, let alone for an NBA team, with Kevin Durant on your team. And when I say Yusuf Nurkic is bad, I mean, where do you even start? He's a traffic cone on defense, he shoots 45% from the field as a center, he averages more turnovers than assists, and often tries to do way too much as a passer to make up for his complete lack of scoring, and he thinks he's being asked to play like Kevin Durant. And the worst part for Phoenix is he's a guy that is structurally crucial to how their team wants to play. But when Mason Plumlee is consistently outplaying you, that's a bit of a problem for a team looking to win a championship. And I'll be honest, I knew Yusuf Nurkic was awful. I think we all knew that. Obviously, Bradley Beal is overpaid and injury prone, and the roster clearly had flaws, but one thing I was certain of was Devin Booker. Well, even D-Book has been caught up in this mess of a season, because for someone who has pretty much maintained a top 10 to 15 level for 5 years now, he has slipped. And the biggest problem for Booker this year is he has gone from one of the most efficient and effective slashers and transition plays in the NBA to just okay. And I think some of that is indicative of the Suns' spacing problems, particularly when Kevin Durant has been injured or on the bench. And some of that will just correct itself because he's that good, but the fact someone so consistent and so good is struggling just tells you this entire roster is rotten at the moment. And some of those spacing issues that I was talking about are a result of the defense. What I mean by that is, the defense has been so poor that they've been forced to play guys like Dunn, Okogie, and Iguodala big minutes who absolutely work tirelessly on the defensive end of the floor, but are pretty close to non-threats on offense outside of making energy and effort plays, which just makes KD and D-Book's job on offense that much more difficult. And because I generally like to be positive on this channel, a few of those guys I just mentioned do deserve credit. The likes of Dunn, Iguodala, and even Royce O'Neal are 3 guys on this team that deserve praise for what they have done, and unfortunately that is reflective of the season the Suns are having, when those are the guys that deserve the most praise for doing their job alongside Kevin Durant. Anyways, if you did make it to the end of the video and want to see more content like this, consider subscribing, dropping a like would be cool. Most importantly, have a great day. Bye.